An old veracity lives here, in the far reaches of the sea. The priests are long gone, but sacrifices are still made. Perhaps you have come here to make a sacrifice. Perhaps the sacrifice is you.
Yeah, I think we're gonna leave. Sunless Sea is a top-down exploration and text RPG developed and published by Failbetter Games. You know how the MCU is an overarching universe in where all of the separate stories can not only take place in the same dimension, but also overlap with characters and events from each other? Failbetter, an independent studio, has managed to accomplish this for all of their games, and it is known as the Fallen London universe. The universe takes its name from the first game in their library, Fallen London, a pure browser text RPG which Sunless Sea is a sort of sequel to, given that Fallen London is in the game and serves as your home base. Fret not, you don't have to have played Fallen London to enjoy Sunless Sea. I didn't touch it until writing this review, but it's free if you want to check it out. At the center of all this is the Sunless Sea itself, or the Z as everyone calls it. This sea houses all of the islands and borders on all of the continents. The Z is massive, big enough to have entire cities and settlements inside of it. It is home to pirates, whirlpools, and sea monsters alike, and it is where the gameplay takes place. The gameplay of Sunless Sea consists of a few different actions: sailing and exploring around this giant sea, managing your resources, combat, and taking place in the text RPG itself. Sailing around this game is just a treat. When you get close to a particular location, the soundtrack kicks in to get you into the mood of the particular island or city you approach, and you get to enjoy the gorgeous and inspired hand-drawn art and animation, whether that be exotic, jolly, creepy, or beautiful. The visuals and soundtrack fill you with this sense of wonder and awe that makes exploring said locations and interacting with its inhabitants all the more alluring. When you get to these locations, you partake in the game's best part, the writing. You see, in Sunless Sea, every location has its own quirk that sets it apart from everywhere else. The Iron Republic is a client state of hell where they do not follow any laws, even those of nature.
Factory engines roar like false lions. Blood thunders in the dock pipes. Crimson lightning skitters across the deck like a cat. Hell has brought freedom to the Iron Republic. Freedom from all laws, even those of nature.
There is an island where you have to wear an animal mask and act like that animal or they will throw you out. Another where the island is populated by Clayman and ruled by the King of 100 Hearts, he which brings life to inanimate objects. And my favorite, Idum, the House of Amber and Sky. Idum, the pillared city. She will rise from the sea and ice like dawn. She will be gnarled with red and decked with gold. The seven serpent will watch you longingly from its high pedestal. You will always arrive as a stranger, but when you leave, some part of you will always remain. It is some kind of paradoxical gateway to another dimension. I don't understand it. I don't think anyone else does either. There are many more locations, but what they all share is that none of them make a lick of sense. and they don't care to explain themselves. What was once exotic or jaw-dropping or terrifying is now relatively normal. That's what's so different and great about it. Of course, how will you get to all of these locations? Sailing, of course. Now, to sail involves 4 things: food, fuel, crew, and terror. Food and fuel are self-explanatory. Food feeds the crew, and fuel powers the ship. Crew is a resource in the sense that some may die to a monster attack or a pirate attack. Some may lose their mind and try to steal from the stores. But the reason you want as many of them as you can get, if your crew goes to half or less of your ship's capacity, you move at half speed. Lose all of them? Game over. While you might be tempted to run at just above half crew so you spend less money on food, don't do that. They die all the time. Terror is the final mechanic, and it is as self-explanatory as it is terrifying. Terror constantly raises while at sea, no matter what. Things like light and being close to land lessen the increase, but it never decreases naturally. The only way to decrease terror is through events at port, like spending time in a famous tea house or throwing a party on the beach, or random events at sea. If your terror gets too high, you and your crew start to lose it. Everyone suffers from hallucinations, delirium, or your crew will just straight up jump off the side. If your terror reaches max, mutiny. Pray you win, because if you don't, game over. Combat is the last part of the gameplay, and it is by far the weakest. If you're fighting a sea monster, invest in a good engine and keep backing up. If you're fighting another ship, stay on its rear and keep firing. Use those 2 tactics and you can win most fights. If you find a fight you can't win, use the all-powered engine's ability to get away, and just be careful your engines don't explode. I touched on the writing a bit in the location section, but it also trickles down into the quests. You see, there are 2 different types of quests in Sunless Sea: officer quests and location quests. Officer quests are given to you, well, by your officers. They usually involve resolving a personal dilemma or perfecting their craft in some way. You might be helping an old army officer escape from her past life, or helping an engineer build the perfect forbidden engine. Location quests are given by interesting parties in all of these locations to advance their goals in one way or another. These pay extremely well in terms of money and stat increases. My favorite is probably the Principle of Coral questline. On a square slab of coral, someone has set up a game of chess. The pieces are different from the ones used in London. You see spiraling bishops, the corner roots, the king, and the terrible cream. As you touch each one, a deep voice whispers its name. It involves a lot of chess references and a huge underground glowing chessboard. You complete some rituals, hunt some monsters, and ultimately win the match. I don't understand any of it, but it got me to think, enjoy some cool reading and scenery, and they paid really well. The game's biggest flaws are all front-loaded at once, which can make it really hard to get into. The first big flaw is money. The game doesn't really tell you how to make it, and making money is important. Money is how you buy food, fuel, and hire crew. Therefore, the first thing you should do is go to the Admiralty in London, where you ask about port reports. Port reports can be generated at each port the first time you dock there per expedition, and will be your primary income source for the entire game. Every port report you turn in gives you a little bit of money and a free barrel of fuel. Turning in reports for farther and more exotic places will net more money as well as some other minor benefits, encouraging you to go out and explore. So yeah, that's Sunless Sea. It's a rough gem that I would recommend to anyone who really wants something akin to an interactive novel mixed with a point-and-click adventure game and a sailing management sim on the side. It's a weird, obscure game, but I think the positives really carry it. There is always another surprise and unexpected find around every corner that keeps me coming back for more. The game also has an expansion, which I would recommend if you like the base game. It adds more characters, storylines, and locations. I recommend it just off the fact that it gives you more ports to scout out, making port report farming more viable. If you want to see more from this developer, they made a sequel, Sunless Skies, which attempted to fix many of the gameplay problems, and I think mostly succeeded. They also have a future game in development, Mark of the Rose, which describes itself as a dark romance game. If this team leans into its writing and storytelling skills and cut out the gameplay entirely, this will be pretty good, and I'm personally excited for it. Alright, see ya. Thanks for watching.